everybody has very big thoughts. And I say big in the nicest way, thoughts about it. Because on one hand, it's all about the options. Because if you don't have an option and you have to pay to get back up and running, then it's unfortunate. But I agree, I never recommend paying a criminal. You don't know if they're, because what they'll do, they'll tell you what they took some of the times, or they'll tell you some of the times it's 20% of what they say that they took. But you don't know whether or not they're going to sell it to the buddy down the street. I mentioned earlier, there's 120 different threat actors that are out there. One just got taken down 2 days ago. I guarantee that these will be popping up. It's like whack-a-mole out there, right? So they're going to come back up in a different form in another week. But you take them down. There's nothing to say they don't sell it to the buddy down the street. Also, it doesn't negate your obligation to notify, meaning that your company, if you have personal identifiable information, social security numbers, dates of birth, because it's all different. It's all based on where the individual resides, not where the company resides, but where the individuals whose information you have resides. That's where you need to notify, and that's the law based on whichever, what kind of information you have, right? So based on that, you need to think about, well, I got to notify anyway, so what am I paying for?
Right.
I'm paying for a promise of you not to put my name up on the website. And by the way, some of the largest vendors in the country right now are monitoring the dark web. So if you don't tell them, they might tell you that you have something going on before it happens. But the other piece to it is, what if, we talked about business interruption, not being down for a day or so, right? What if you don't have a choice? What if you think about, well, you know what, it's going to cost me, $500,000 to be down for 2 days, right? Sometimes paying for the key is going to be less costly than what it would be like to be down a week, 2 weeks. So to have those conversations like with Greg's team that says, hey, look, I can get back up in 24 hours. Well, that gives you the option.
Right.
But if not, you might have to look at it and have that just conversation from a business perspective. Hey, look, how long will it take me to restore from backups? What's it going to cost us as a company? And what's it going to cost from a reputational harm issue as well? Because if I can't produce to my client, they're going to go down the buddy down the street, my competitor. So, and if your name's going to be out there and they can't trust you, that also could be a very big ding to your company.
And she is right. I will tell you that in Salinas, when we've been involved in some of the larger attacks, we've had Target, Kroger, all of those guys who are monitoring the dark web contact the client that was impacted and saying, what happened, how did it happen, are you safe, all this stuff. So they are absolutely watching it, and there's no keeping secrets anymore. The minute and it's also Salinas, right? You're going to be on the phone call and everybody's going to share, right? So.
And everybody's been through it, though. Actually, I feel like the more transparent companies have been, the more people say, oh, I'm so sorry it's happened to you.
Yeah.
Right? If anything,
and you're learning from each other.
Yeah.
I think back to Greg's point when he talked about, don't look at the insurance company's new requirements as a punishment. Look at it as a way to make yourself more resilient. And the SEC rules that just came out, don't look at those as, a burden, which they are, but the good side of it is that now everybody's learning from other people's, cyber attacks, and you're all kind of going, okay, so these guys didn't pay and they still, got back up and running. All right, maybe we could take the same stance, or this is what this company's seeing. We're a similar industry. We should be prepared for that. So I think that, a lot of these rules and requirements that are coming at you are going to benefit you in the end.
Speaking of wonderful rules, just so you guys are aware, so it's not only just, SEC, but there is about 13 pending rules, because it's, I hate to say, but one-upsmanship going on right now in both state and federal, but they are looking at all industries across the board. So publicly traded companies, oh, well, you're the first one not really the first one, but you're the one being targeted right now. And by the way, the SEC has 4 pending regulations for private industries and private entities and all of that, and all the banking industries and all that beyond that. But thinking about your regulatory requirements, there's 13 different states that are out there that are really just increasing the levels of what your requirements are going to be. They're coming across the board in terms of all industries, like critical infrastructure. People always say, oh wait, that's just power or it's gas. It's not. It goes to, if you take a look and ask, Do I fall under critical infrastructure? You might, and you most likely do, which means that you might fall under that 72-hour wonderful requirement to notify under those particular rules as well. So everybody asks me, well, why do you need a lawyer? You know, like what? And honestly, you know, when it comes down to it, it's for communications, for making sure that you're not blowing through a contract or anything like that, because some of your Krogers and Targets of the world have very strict requirements. Take a look at them now, by the way. Take a look at them to see, because most of them state that in the event of an incident, you got to notify them in 48 hours or 72 hours, even if you don't know their data is at issue. And you do not want to be blowing through or be in breach of a contract. It's way easier to get, you know, I want to say, you know, go to a competitor if you're in breach of contract. But the other piece to it is also you want to be thinking about, I want to be subject to attorney-client privilege as well. So bringing in a forensics team, what we do is we enter into what's called a tri-party agreement, meaning something that's signed by you as the company, me as the lawyer, and Greg's team as the forensic or whomever, whatever we're going to be doing that from a forensic perspective. So then our conversations and the investigation that is done is subject to privilege and confidentiality. So whatever they find, because they're taking a look under the hood to make sure, hey, look, how did this happen? What data was taken? What are we doing to make sure that we get back up and running efficiently and securely? That we do it and it's confidential and not something that to be shared with any third parties.
And we see that come into play on the insurance side too, where the insurance company is asking for the forensic investigation. And when you have that tri-party, when you have that tri-party agreement, that's protected under attorney-client privilege, and the insurance company is not privy to that, which is good because at your renewal, you don't want the insurance company saying, hey, well, you had that event last year and this is what you did wrong. What did you do to, you know, make sure you're not going to suffer a similar incident in the future? So that's very important.
If I could, yeah, I'm sorry, I get excited.
I know, it's so fun. I can't tell that we're all excited about it.
The attorney-client privilege thing is really critical. And one thing to be aware of, right? So if your attorney and your owner is talking to each other and they say, get this from your IT, make sure when the owner emails the IT department that he keeps the attorney on it. Class action lawsuits suck. They're horrible. I've been deposed. I was deposed once for 7.5 hours because I'm told under a federal thing you can only go 8, and they took me right to the edge.
Oh my Lord.
And they spent 2 hours going through a list of emails where the attorney got dropped from the thread and we just communicated amongst ourselves, and we had to claim each line item. I believe what they were doing is just racking up bills against the class action. So don't break basic rules like that. Also, to go back to it, you know, HR has PII in their home directories and in their shared drives. Sorry, HR, you do. It's always there. Delete it. Delete it. UltiPro, I believe ADP also has a selection where you can take away downloading PII. So when you need to run a report, it just does the asterisk with the last 4. Engage on stuff like that, because we see a ton of ways to be done. It's just horrible.
And just to add to that about with what Greg was saying is think about what you have in your systems and what you need readily accessible, because there's certain things that you are going to be required under law to keep for 7 years, 10 years, but it doesn't have to be on your active system, because that is one thing that if you can put it in cold storage, it's annoying. I know people love to do search in Outlook and like to search throughout, but you know what? It's a hell of a lot more annoying to have to call me. And the bills associated with trying to find out what was taken, how much information was taken, because it's better to deal with in the event that they did take information of a year versus 10 years worth of information, former employees that are more likely going to lead to that class action. I will tell you, in the past 2 years alone, so we probably have gone up from now, in the past year, it's now tripled in the amount of litigation that we have seen. And it's no longer the threshold of, well, I had to notify 10,000 people, and that's what led to the class action. I had one last week that we notified 2,500 people, which has now led to a class action. It is, Wednesday, and I have 3 plaintiffs already in the class action. Plaintiffs' attorneys right now, what they're doing There are certain attorney generals that require that you post the notification letter that you send out. How many notification letters have you guys gotten in the past year alone that say, hey, look, my information was taken from X, Y, and Z, and all this other stuff? There are regulators now, the attorney generals require companies to post it on to their web. So what do plaintiffs' attorneys do? They know which websites, they know that the 10 different states out there that post it, California, Massachusetts, Maine. I mean, I hate to pick on California, but it's just easy. Because it's a big place, far, it is. And what they'll do the search, and they'll say, oh wait, this is the new notice that's going out there. Then they'll take that notice, they'll take the company's name, they'll go over to LinkedIn, pull everybody's name who was an employee, a former employee, and they'll send them directed marketing letters that say, join the class action. Even if one doesn't exist, they're going to get one that's going to exist.
Yeah.
So be aware this is a very, I think it's probably a very aggressive tactic, but it's effective.
Right.
So, and this is not big company stuff, not the ones like MGM that's going to hit the news, or Colonial Pipeline, or all those. We're talking about small, medium companies that will potentially bankrupt them if they have to deal with a class action lawsuit. Speaking of positivity today.
I just want to say that this right now is the first time that this group has spoken as a group, and we are just like bouncing off of each other, and poor Justin has all of these.
Oh my God, I was like,
he's got these questions prepared, and we're just off to the races.
You get enough good brains in the room, you're going to have a good conversation.
But do you guys have any questions? I mean,
So I joined the party a little late, but I was just thinking as you were talking, and all of us are now like really excited about new platforms in which we're putting our payroll and all that information. What kinds of questions should we be asking these companies before we sign up and give them all of our data? So any advice?
I'll let you start.
So let me start just with practical. So what I'm saying about everybody, HR having reports in their home directories, stuff like that, the point of that is keep them in the systems that you're paying to do the security, right? And if you keep it there, then it's on them and all that. So with respect to that, my general guidance is go with known good companies. Don't go with startups. Don't go with people that maybe don't have security drilled into them. But they all have disclosures on SOC 2. SOC 2 is a good requirement that I would look for. SOC 2. It's a standard cybersecurity type role. That would be my main one. But ultimately go with UltiPro, go with Chronos Bit, but again, it's on them. But it's on them. So that would be what I would recommend.
Yeah. And just to add to that, one of the things that just keep in mind, as a company, you're always responsible for the vendors that you choose. Unless they contract around it, which I will tell you, most of those larger companies, you can try. It's as somebody asked me the other day about Microsoft. Right? Oh, can I try to, go against them in terms of the contract? And I said, good luck. Okay, line right behind you.
Yeah.
But take a look at what they're asking you to sign and what their obligations are back to you. So one of the things to look for is what's called limitation to liability, because a lot of the times they say, unless it's quote unquote gross negligence, do you see that word in a contract? Cross it out, or have an attorney go in there and just say, no, because gross negligence is a very high standard to prove that's out there. Negligence is a little bit more of the gray area, because were they negligent in holding your data? Were they negligent in their security measures? Versus were they grossly negligent? It's just a higher standard to prove. Take a look whether or not that they have arbitration clauses that are in there. Those are my favorite. Because those go to limiting what they can pay back to you in the event that they're down. The other thing is, we're talking about SOC 2, if they have an incident, hypothetically, and this goes to supply chain and third-party issues, if they have an incident, what is their obligation to you? So let's just say, especially like, to pick on Kronos, we'll pick on hypothetical Kronos-esque company, because that's a thing, so if you're giving all of your HR information over to them, right, and they have an incident, what they're gonna get, the question becomes, if you, because ultimately you need to make sure your employees whose information is in there are notified appropriately. Not them, you, because you are quote unquote the data owner. So if you take a look at the contract, sometimes it says, you know what, all I have to do is notify you, and the money and the payments and making sure that the individuals are notified, that's all on you.
So I'm going to piggyback
Yeah.
on that. So we have a lot of clients who are in that exact scenario where it's their vendor that they use that sustained a breach. And they're calling us and they're saying, we didn't sustain the breach, don't report it to our insurance company. Your insurance company wants to manage the claim on your behalf rather than leave you out there relying on your vendor's insurance company to protect you. That breach counsel for the vendor is protecting the vendor. Yes, they will, provide you with recommendations and maybe a notification letter, but their obligation is to that vendor. You want your insurance to be triggered, so your insurance is hiring Carolyn and she is protecting your rights under the policy. You want to make sure that, you've got your insurance. If there's a contract and they are responsible, your insurance company can subdate to their insurance, but use your protection. Don't rely on the third parties because nobody working on that vendor is concerned with you.
And then the other thing is, if MFA is available, if it's not available, don't use them. If it is available, make sure you implement it. And engage your IT team. I mean, IT teams suck, right? They're too slow, they cause you delays. We're horrible, that's who I am. But they know stuff too, right? So engage with them and make sure you follow the best practices, MFA, etc. Right? Not texting as security, but take advantage of what the security does there.
Yeah, and ask them also, do you, in the event of an incident, are you going to be an additional insured under the policy, which they will say no, but worth a try. But also, do they have cyber insurance? Because I had a client just yesterday who was notified that 3 million of their individuals' information is now out there. But guess what? They're out of insurance. Their third-party vendor is out of insurance funds because they had a ton of information that was out there. Well, guess who's now responsible? My client, right? And the costs associated with that, I mean, right now I had to tell them that just notifying the individuals alone is going to be in excess of $3 million to notify, right? So just to think
that's
about.
To my point regarding
Right.
your limits, do not have a
Right.
$1 million.
Don't have a $1 million
out there.
policy. But also know your vendors, and if they have your information, ask them, do you have a declaration page? Because a lot of those contracts also roll over to one another, like from years, like,
Yes.
I mean, how many of you guys have contracts with the same people for 10 years running?
Right.
Right? And they just roll and they automatically
There's no
renew.
cyber insurance required in those contracts?
Right, so if you take a look at them, they're probably silent to it, right? So this would be the time, take a look, make sure that you put that information that's in there. So it's all about protecting yourself and your company and the information that you have.
It's funny, my wife spends more time looking at our insurance policy for burning our house down, or our house burning down, than most companies spend looking at their cyber.
Yeah.
And what are the odds of a house burning
Right.
down? They
Right.
don't anymore. Yeah, or Taylor burned down, but that's one thing, right? These things are happening all the time.
Yeah.
So spend the time.
Poor Justin is like, where are we now?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like,
I'm still tracking. We've got a question over here.
So I'm not an HR person. I have been in marketing and PR for the produce industry for many years and been involved in all of the recalls. Since 2006, that was my very first recall. And with that, this industry, especially if you're in the Salinas Valley, deal with leafy greens, has created some sort of crisis management response team, incident man, whatever you want to call it. We all did it because we didn't know what to do when it happened to us. And LGMA has helped the industry at large in Salinas Valley specifically figure out how to respond to those crises. And what has happened of late is we've got very comfortable that we have a crisis management response team and process. But nothing that you've talked about today other than call your attorney and call your PR agency, is covered
Wow.
in this type of thing. And a major leafy green supplier here, they relied so heavily on that crisis management. I mean, we used to crash buildings, crash airplanes into our building. We would practice if we had a pneumonia leak. We did all the things, but there was never this practice. Nobody looked at it, and they became Greg's client. Not in a moment of glory, but in a moment of crisis.
Yeah.
And I think that this industry just doesn't think about that because we're busy growing things.
Yes.
We're not busy worried about what other criminals are doing other than stealing the diesel off our farms, right?
Yes.
So that idea that we had a plan because we were blindsided as an industry, and I mean, Greg has a great business because we're being blindsided again. Right?
Yeah.
Not that I want you to go away, but I just, that idea of thinking that we had something, we don't have anything
That's
anymore.
right.
I think it's really important, not just for HR to hear that because it tends to live in their domain, but leadership needs to understand that what we invested an insane amount of money on to figure out how to plan to protect ourselves is not relevant for anything cyber.
No. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a
and
great
here-
lead-in that I'll frame for the group. Is I think we've all decided that after the avalanche is not when to learn about snow safety, and we're going to spend an appreciable amount of time preparing for a day we hope doesn't happen, so that we're ready when it does. So in each of your practices, how does that incident response look as far as your strategy and procedure in your space? And so Greg, if you'd like to start.
All right, so thank you for that. We engage a lot with companies creating an incident response plan. And the critical thing about an incident response plan is it depends, right? What is most critical? What do you have to get up first? It depends. If it's a day before payroll, it may be your payroll system, right? If it's ERP, it's almost always ERP. But it could be multiple things, right? I deal with a cattle producing company, or they slaughter cattle. And when I asked them what their most critical thing was, they said the cow's hanging on the hook. Not to be graphic, but you know, that's what they care about. Well, we got talking and they realized, well, that can be up there for 8 hours because the plant is cooled and it's okay. And it really came down to, after like 45 minutes of talking to everybody, that it was paying the suppliers, because in the 1800s you had to deliver cattle and you had to pay the cowboys so they could go get drunk right away. And so the federal government has a rule on how quickly you have to pay them, and that became their number one. So going through an IR plan will help you figure out what is most important, and that's the only way to do it. Well, the other way to do it is in the heat of the moment, and at that point everybody's a squeaky wheel, and your IT doesn't know, is HR more important than ERP, more important than production, because they don't know, and everybody's volume is elevated. So
that
we
knee-jerk reaction was wrong, right? Because they said this is the important thing, and after you talked about it, you realized it wasn't.
It is.
And in the spur of the moment, they would have done not the best.
Exactly. And so that's the idea. So we develop a plan and try to figure out, and like she mentioned, 24 hours is my goal to get a company back up. That's a hard target, but it's something. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg.
So for me, it would be communications. So whatever you go out the door, you know, Craig was just talking about the emails. You can't, you know, memories fade, pieces of paper don't, and emails don't. So always think about what you're communicating out to everybody, to vendors, to your employees, to everybody who's out there. And that's why you work with crisis management, you work with attorneys who I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you are protected, and whatever you say that's going out there is not going to open the door to more liability. And so it's all about minimizing the damage and making sure that it's putting you in the best light. This stuff is going to happen. If it hasn't happened to you already, it's going to happen. It's not meant to scare, it's more to just inform. And really, it's just about knowing who are the people in your corner. It's companies like Greg, it's people like Jennifer who are going to do everything in their power to protect you. And really and knowing who your advocates are really the most critical piece.
Yeah, I would double down on that is communication. Know in advance what to do and who to call. Greg's going to tell you what to do, and I'm going to tell you to call Carolyn. So that's critical. Don't assume you can manage it on your own. A lot of our clients will call and say, hey, we had an event, but we think we've got it managed. Don't go that route. You want to get the experts in there to identify exactly what data was taken, and you want to understand the laws that you have to follow with respect to notification. And you might have it managed, and you might be able to shut down the event on your own with your own IT possibly. A year from now, you might get a third-party liability suit. If you don't report it to the carrier when it happened, it's a claims-made policy. You've just jeopardized all coverage for that third-party suit that comes a year from now. Get it reported to your broker, get it reported to the carrier, and get the experts engaged.
And part of that is a year from now is critical. So IT guys, again, we just want to get everything back up and working, right? And what that does is that destroys a ton of evidence. And you need that evidence to prove, did this PI get out or not? Because if it didn't, you have different responsibilities. So make sure that you get the right people to the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that leaves me in a position of, well then, if I don't have evidence to show me what was taken, I'm going to assume that everything was taken.
Yeah.
So then, unfortunately, it's leaving you in an even worse spot.
As we're getting kind of at the end of our time slot here, I wanted to have anyone comment on key takeaways. Things absolutely do, absolutely don't, that we haven't talked about until now, that we can send all of our AgSafe members home with.
Great. I'm going to just repeat what I've said from the onset. Don't assume you can manage it on your own. Do report it. Don't incur any costs without obtaining written consent from the insurer in advance, and rely on the experts.
Mine would probably be, there are some really easy things to do and low-cost things to do to protect yourselves. Take advantage of them. Take advantage of insurance. Take advantage of the people that you know who are out there who can only do their best to help you. And always remember, the first call is free, so don't hesitate.
and mine is, understand that you're a computer company. You cannot function without computers. And by that, then you have to do the right things to make sure that you're able to survive.
Great. And I'm sure everyone's happy to field questions as a group afterwards, and they've got some great war stories to bed here with as well.
It's scary.
Yeah.
She's wearing a brace for crying out loud.
I know. It was a threat actor. You should have seen it.
I'd just like to add, I worked with a former employer in Fort Bragg. We were insured by your company. We engaged your company within an hour and 15 minutes.
Really?
Within 2 hours, we engaged the forensics firm. Within 5 hours, it was code, I mean, I can't remember the names. I don't have an email signal here or internet connection, because everything went to a personal Gmail account instantly once it happened.
Yeah.
I just want to share with everybody in the room, it's real. It was a coffee company, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And sales of, $4 million a year. And we were hit. And fortunately, with the coverage we had, we were out 10 grand for the deductible.
Yep.
But the services, when it was all said and done, because of the firm, the engagement, it was in upwards of, I think, $50,000. So we saved 40 grand. I mean, again, I didn't know you people walking in. I'm not getting anything in a paper envelope later. But it was a company in Fort Bragg. Lacey is the gal that I worked with in Petaluma that's a broker. If she's still with you, the fellow was named John that was with your firm that I worked with. And it was like being in an episode of CSI is the best way I could describe it to people. It really was. Anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
We'll just bring you along for the road show.
I know. Thanks for the share.
It's real.
Yeah,
It's
thank
very,
you.
very real.
Yeah.
Well, I like to say, like people say, like cyber attacks, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I like to say it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of how many times you're going to be attacked in a 12-month period.
What was helpful to me is we use some cloud-based systems, and I want to go to those folks and ask what their layers are, going back to what Greg said, so that everybody that touches your organization, you want to know what they're doing to prevent this happening.
Absolutely.
But,
And you have a right to ask
Yeah.
too. That's the thing. If you're giving them your data, you have a right to ask. So don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.